It is now December 9th, and late season is officially here in my mind. The 1 week firearm season here in Ohio is now over, and it's really about finding leftovers. I'm out doing some trail camera work, putting some cell cameras out to take inventory to see what's left over and start putting work in to fill this. So obviously I still have a tag in my pocket. And with that, you know, there's a lot of things that people talk about in the late season that either I don't agree with or science does not agree with. And that's what we want to talk about, the handful of late season whitetail myths. The very first thing I want to talk about is something that's going to come as a shocker. And there's probably going to be a lot of people that disagree with me. But the reality of it is it's not true, and it's backed by science. And that is the myth that because it's cold, because it's winter, deer eat more, that they need to consume more caloric energy to stay alive. And that is not true. You can Google this, you can talk to your local whitetail biologist, but it's not true. Deer do not eat more food. They do not need to increase their caloric intake to stay alive. Whitetails, actually, their biology changes with the seasons. As the temperatures decrease, as the temperature gets cold and they're forced to survive in these frigid temperatures, their bodies change. So their metabolism slows down, and even their core body temperatures lower in efforts that that they actually do not need as many calories to survive. So their entire body biological system slows down, their body temperatures decrease, their metabolism slow, and that is Mother Nature, you know, playing her hand at helping these animals really be able to survive such brutal conditions through the wintertime. So again, there's probably a lot of people that out there that disagree with this. You know, this is not my opinion. This is science. It's backed by science. Deer do not need to increase their caloric intake to survive cold weather. The next thing I want to talk about is the saying, you can't kill them from the couch. And while that's true at face value, putting pressure on your property this time of year or pressuring deer can certainly end your hunt and end your season a lot faster than what a lot of people realize. At this point in the season, the deer have been hunted, they've been shot at, they've had human encounters, they've been pressured. And at this point in the year, they're worried about security, and they're worried about food, and they're worried about surviving. So, you know, they're not necessarily on pins and needles, but they've been bumped around a little bit. They know that they're being hunted at this point in the season, and it makes it a lot harder to fill that late season tag. Not only with pressure, but even just look around this parcel right here. It's wide open. There's less foliage on the trees. There's less ground cover. So visually, just being on a property makes a lot more, can do a lot more damage than what it could do in the earlier part of the season. So keep that in mind. You can't kill them from the couch. Yes, that is true, but pressuring your properties late season can ruin your hunt and end your season faster than a lot of people realize. This is a time you need to be utilizing your trail cameras, letting them do the work, and hunt and scout smart and efficiently in the late season. The third late season myth I want to talk about is there's no rutting activity in the late season. You know, guys think that, you know, deer are only getting bred in November, and there's no such thing as a late season rutting activity or late season breeding. And it's one of those comical things. And I think this is something that more and more people are getting educated on, but it's not true. Does get bred all different times of the year. There's does that come into estrus in late October and get bred. Obviously, the majority of the does get bred in November, but that happens on a bell curve. Peak breeding is, you know, it's different everywhere across the country, but let's just say through the Midwest, we'll call it the November 13th, 14th, somewhere in there. That's the peak breeding of the whitetail rut through the Midwest. But you have does that come back and cycle back into estrus every 28 days if they are not bred. It happens We see it on our cameras. We see it from the stand. And that 28-day cycle puts us right back smack into middle of December. And then beyond, you know, adult does cycling back into estrus every 28 days, there's a phenomenon with fawns reaching, you know, sexual maturity. We'll call it 85 pounds, 80 to 90 pounds. When they hit that mature body weight, they can become sexually active. So when that happens, they come into estrus and opens up a whole nother flurry of rutting activity. The majority of the time throughout the Midwest, this happens in December and January. We've seen on trail cameras. We've seen it seen it from the stand. And those does that cycle in and those fawns, they do get bred. And those late born or late bred does and fawns produce late born fawns. Those late born fawns, if they're bucks, a lot of times will end up being spikes because they're born so late into the year. They're behind on the nutritional curve, and when they reach 1.5 years old, their first rack is typically a spike, not a little forky or little basket rack 6-point or anything like that. And then it becomes they're behind the bell curve on the antler growth for 4 or 5 years before they actually get caught up. But those spikes are typically a result of late born fawns, which is a result of late bred does. So don't think that there's not going to be any rutting activity in your neck of the woods because November is over. That's just not the case. It's not true. There's rutting activity that goes on all through the whitetail season. So don't give up hope just yet. Okay, the last whitetail late season myth I want to talk about is having to hunt the coldest parts, the coldest days of the year. We all talk about weather fronts and hunting changes on the weather, and a lot of times that happens with temperature decreases. However, in the late season, when temperatures get really, really frigid, and I'm saying cold, so down into the lower single digits, down into 0 or negative degrees, deer are not gonna want to move. They're going to end up moving on the warmer part of the day. So as that sun comes up and starts to heat up, and maybe it goes up to 10 degrees or 12 degrees, that's when those deer are going to get up and mill around, browse on their daytime browsing food source, because they don't want to get up and move in those cold temperatures, because it's going to take up more caloric energy for them to get up and stay warm at the coldest, very coldest part of the day. So at sunrise, typically that's your coldest part of the day. One of the things that we've noticed on the cell cameras, or running so many cell cameras, is that movement being very, very minimal during the very coldest parts of the day. And then as those temperatures start to increase, then thus we start to see a little more movement on those cell cameras. And again, this isn't, that's not a standard rule of thumb for any late season day, 30 degrees, even 20 degrees. I think deer are pretty, throughout the Midwest, can handle those types of temperatures, and it's not out of the norm. I'm really talking about the cold, frigid days, those polar vortex days where it is bone chilling, dangerously cold to be outside. Those are the days that deer are going to want to stay inside of their security or inside of their thermal cover, stay warm, and minimize their movement in efforts to save caloric energy. Hope I didn't ruffle too many feathers with this video. Some of you guys out there might have different opinions on it, but the reality of it is, regardless of what your opinion is on some of this stuff, there's science behind it, and the science doesn't lie. It is what it is. So hopefully you guys gain a little bit of deer knowledge, and you have a great late season and fill tag.